Fofana, FIFA, Momana, Lana.
As I'm sure you figured out by now, our topic today is going to be names. Specifically, we're going to talk about the importance of names and why you should really be mindful of, especially what you name your children.
In the spiritual realm, the higher beings do not necessarily use names to identify who they are, but in the human form, on the third dimension where we're at, it's a commonplace to give ourselves names.
We name everything. We name rivers, lakes, we name ourselves, our children. We name the land on which we live, we name the sky, we name the stars.
And with everything that we name and categorize, that name has a vibration, it has a frequency that resonates with that person or that living thing from that point forward. So it's very important for us to cover this topic in regards to choosing names for our children and learning about the names that we are currently associated with.
Historically, it was very common in different spiritual or religious traditions for people to actually change their name. And now again, in modern times, we are seeing this resurge as people are adopting new names, having their names legally changed. People have various reasons for doing this. Most commonly, it is last names. But a lot of people now are starting to think about changing their first name as well to be more in line with their spiritual path. Also, a lot of parents-to-be tend to research names at some point, but usually the name is just a one-word definition, and then it gives you the language of origin that that name comes from. But on a spiritual level, names are vibration, and that vibration is very important.
So you have to think of it in a way of frequency and vibration and sound the name out that you're thinking about. And the next step would be to take that name, if it's a common name that you've heard before from the past, present, and if it's a name that you think will carry forward on its own merits, please take a moment to review in your mind anyone that you know that has the same name that you're thinking about and try to identify synchronicities between those individuals with that same name to see any type of patterns that would be good and that resonate with you, and those patterns that are not so good that you wouldn't like attached to that name.
What we have found on our spiritual journey is that people with the same first name that is spelled the same way generally have very similar personalities. And notice I said same spelling. So as an example, Kathy with a C is not going to have the same type of personality as Kathy with a K. So you need to think about individuals you know with that first name, hopefully it's more than one, and kind of evaluate for yourself what you pick up on from their personality, and then decide, is that the personality that you want your child to grow into? Because you're calling them that by that vibration after they're born, that is the vibration they will grow into most often.
And a quick reference point in regards to the difference between the letter C and the letter K, as Jill has pointed out, for any name, is if you listen to yourself pronounce the word C, the letter C, and the letter K, there's a vast difference between the two frequencies, hence creating a difference in the vibration.
One example that I can think of off the top of my head is someone named Mindy, but it is not spelled the traditional way. It is spelled with a Y in the middle of it and E's at the end. That vibration of Mindy is going to be vastly different from the traditional spelling of Mindy. It is going to create a whole unique personality, and this is why you have what sound like common names nowadays, but are actually unique spellings. And this is the spirit coming through people's higher self that is actually giving them these ideas to change the spelling of the name for their child.
Yeah, so it's not as similar to that of a very common name like Fred, Bob, John, Sarah, Frank, Debbie, so on and so forth. What we're getting at here is the spelling of the name is the vibration, the frequency that you're attaching to that person. If it's a newborn child, you're giving them that vibration. Think about that. You're not just giving them a name because it looks good, it sounds good, it's cool, it's different. It comes with a frequency and vibration, which ultimately...
It'll help or hinder them on their spiritual development.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always exceptions to any rule, though, and we have found this. So one of them we just stated. We stated that if you change the spelling, it changes the vibration of the name, hence changes the personality. The other exceptions to this rule are people that are more spiritually advanced, and even though they may have a common name like Sarah, they may not resonate with Sarah. They may accept that name as their societal name, but they literally do not resonate with the name Sarah. And so they might, in their mind, prefer another name, or they might start going by a nickname. And that nickname is more reflective of the vibration that they are actually at.
For an example that we've run into, let's say your name is Catherine. That's your birth name, Catherine. You prefer to go by Kathy, or in some cases, you abbreviate it down to Katie. There's a lot of Katies out there that their full name, their given name is Catherine, but they resonate more with Katie. That's about frequency and vibration again. But they're changing it. They're going with that nickname because it resonates closer to what they represent spiritually.
Last names are important too, but they're not as prominent as the first name for affecting you vibrationally, but they still affect you. A lot of people that may have had a troubled youth or childhood may decide to change their last name, whether it be through marriage and adopting the name of their spouse, the surname of their spouse, or they just may change it even if they do not get married. They just may change it to something else, and it's usually going to be a last name of someone that truly did care for them as they were growing up. So it's important for you to figure out for yourself too if your last name is serving you or if it's not.
So another spin on this is when you look into the professional realms of any given industry where you have to choose or pick a pseudonym in order to perform your work, think about that name that you're choosing for your pseudonym is generally shorter in sound and in spelling than your original birth name that you use every day. And watch as that individual who chooses that pseudonym develops characteristics separate from their current ones with their birth name into a more comfortable pattern that feels better to them, and hence their use of that pseudonym would be the same as a nickname. You go with the nickname, that would be considered a pseudonym. Those that use a pseudonym to perform their duties tend to appreciate that name more and resonate with that name more, even though they don't use it outside of the realm of work.
One of the other exceptions to the rule of personality tied in with your name would be someone that is mentally or intellectually disabled. Generally, they're actually going to have a much lighter vibration than whatever their name is, and that's just because they're not caught up in the analytical, compartmentalized world that the rest of us tend to function in.
That's right. They're living more of an unconscious lifestyle, connected more to the spirit side of them, their spirit self, than the conscious awareness or conscious self of the rest of us who we consider normal. I want to mention, too, in regards to when we're attaching a name to anything or anybody, the rules still apply. Whether you're thinking of a name for a new pet that you just brought home from the pet store or the rescue barn, think about that name that you're giving them and how is that connected to your past? And why does it make you feel comfortable in calling them, giving them that name? Because that animal will answer to that name. They'll answer to any name as long as you're treating them decently and humanely. But as that name becomes more integrated with that animal, that vibration from that name is being absorbed by that animal and changing its frequency to match that name. So it's very important that we be mindful of the names that we're giving our animals as well as our children.
That just kind of reminded me of when I used to work at the horse boarding facility, and there was this really old horse that was named Spitfire. And boy, was she. She lived up to that name. She was like pushing 30, which is about the maximum lifespan for a horse. But she loved hanging out with the younger horses, and she'd just run out in the pasture, tail straight up, and boy, off she went. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny when you think about it. As much as we love to name everything, you know what we don't name? We don't name the trees in our yard. We have the species name, but most people don't even know that. But we don't go out there and call the tree Joey. Most people don't anyway. Some people do.
That's funny that you brought that up. Our neighbor and I found a little seedling in the front yard of our home, and both of us decided to plant that seedling and see if it would actually develop into a mature tree. And because of the leaf structure of the little seedling, we were assuming that the tree would become an oak tree. So jokingly, we named the tree Oaky. And that's what we still call it today, even though it's about 10 years later and it's a beautiful big tree.
It's a silver maple, isn't it?
It is a silver maple, yes.
Isn't that funny? So, Oaky the silver maple.
Oaky the silver maple, yes.
But see, this is the thing. I think most people do name things and pets and all this out of love, but it's more of an identifier.
It is. It's more relatable to us psychologically because where we come from in the third dimension that we operate in, we categorize everything. We label everything. And that, from the spiritual perspective, they don't care about that. They know what we do, and they work around that with us. But it does change our demeanor when we are passing a tree, seeing a tree every day, and simply acknowledging that it's a tree. Even though you put your hand on it and giving it that loving energy, by giving it a name, it accelerates it, accentuates that energy, that demeanor that you're approaching that tree with, and forms a very strong bond between you and the tree, or any object for that matter. So when we're playing the name game, when we're thinking about that and the names that surround us each and every day, whether it be friends, family, or so on, try to take one name at a time of a friend or a family member, and it can be current or deceased, and try to connect the dots and sync up with others with that same name that you've known in your lifetime, and see if there isn't a pattern with characteristics, idiosyncrasies, so on and so forth, and see if there isn't a pattern there. Try to connect the dots.
So to wrap up this discussion about names, I'm going to reiterate the exceptions to the rule about the importance of names and their vibration. First, we have people with intellectual disabilities. There's also unique spellings on the name, or people who are spiritually advanced. And the last one is variations in pronunciation, such as Jesus versus Jesus. Even though the spelling is the same, the vibration is different.
For further information on this topic of names, there's a blog on our website, karmikchannels.org, where you can go in there and you can read that blog and see more about this topic. If you have any questions regarding this, you can also email us at contact@karmikchannels.org. And we hope that this topic today shed some light on moving forward for you in regards to what's in a name.